When you're ready, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Ben. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the North Canton City Council Committee of the Whole meeting, Monday, September 21st, 7 p.m. Ben, would you please call the roll?
Member Fonte,
Here.
Member Soretta,
Here.
Member Stroya,
Here.
Member Revolt,
Here.
Member Foltz,
Here.
President Peters,
Here.
and Member Warren is absent.
Motion to excuse Member Warren.
Revolt seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, first up, Community and Economic Development. Chairman Revolt, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This evening, we are going to begin the process to establish a designated outdoor refreshment area. The material you have in your hands or in your packets this evening was prepared by our economic development consultant, the Montrose Group. And joining us tonight to offer an initial explanation for us is Nate Green, who is the Director of Economic Development. We have met Nate before. He is no stranger. And then one of the architects of our CRA ordinance is Jamie Grant, who is the manager of economic development for Montrose. So Nate and Jamie, if you'd like to open, we'll go from there.
Great.
Just as an FYI, before you start, Stephanie texted back and she's working on getting access, so she may join us in a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all. This is Nate Green from the Montrose Group. Thank you all for having us at your meeting this evening. Councilman Revolt. I have other names for you, but I guess that's what I'll call you for this evening. So,
We have names for him too, so don't worry about it.
You know what? You all know him well too. I'm sure you do. But thanks for kicking us off in the door discussion. As Daryl said, we've been working with Pat and his team on this for a little while. I think this is a great concept for the North Canton Main Street Business District. It really enhances. I think the real benefits here are what it does for those businesses along that corridor. Really to enhance their commerce, enhance their business, enhance their finances, just economically. Even I think with what we're going on right now, that the door will do great things to really not only help the businesses that are there today, but ones that you want to attract in the future. I'm going to turn it over to Jamie Beyer-Grant from the Montrose team. And Jamie's going to give some more details just on the DORA in particular. And then I think we're going to have Pat talk about the map because he and Ben put the map together. So Jamie, I'm going to turn it over to you if you want to kind of go through the specifics of the DORA and the process, and then we'll talk about the map.
Hey, you guys. Hey, you guys. Stephanie just joined. Hey, thank you, Ben. Appreciate that. Sorry, I'm at a work event at Salt Fork, so internet is sketchy.
Hey, welcome, Steph.
Thank you. I have our attorney with us, so we're all in good shape. Sorry, Terry.
That's okay, Steph.
I'm keeping him under wraps, though. Don't worry. I'm making him feel things and share things, so we're all good, Terry.
Good.
All right. Thanks, you guys. Sorry about that.
Well, good evening, everyone. Again, Jamie Beyer-Grant with the Montrose Group. I'm pleased to be with everyone this evening. Nate kind of gave an overview of the DORA district that the city is looking at establishing along the Main Street business corridor. And what I thought I would do is just kind of give a high-level overview of the process to actually establish a DORA. And just to kind of give some context around the application that Pat DiOrio submitted a while back, and I guess that council is looking at taking up considering conversation around tonight. So The great thing about establishing a DORA is that the Ohio Revised Code gives us some really specific guidance on how to establish a DORA. And a DORA is a designated outdoor refreshment area. And it falls under Ohio Revised Code section 4301.82. And when we look at designating or establishing a DORA as it relates to the city of North Canton specifically, if the city or with the city having a population of less than 35,000 people, ORC tells us that we can establish a DORA district that is a maximum of 150 contiguous acres. The other thing that the Ohio Revised Code talks about is that the administrator or leader of the city is the one that is to put the application together and present it to the legislative oversight committee, which would be city council, for their consideration and taking it up for either approving or disapproving the application. And council must take that up not earlier than 30 days, but not later than 60 days after the initial publication of the notice. So we're within that time frame. The other thing within the DORA is that the application specifically has to describe the territory that would constitute the outdoor refreshment area. And a big part of that is because we have to identify those businesses that have current liquor permits that are in good standing. And if the DORA application is approved, it then subsequently gets submitted to the Division of Liquor Control, as well as the investigative unit of the Department of Public Safety. They receive notice of the approval of the application, and then the Division of Liquor Control reviews to make sure that those liquor licenses are in compliance and are in good standing. And then they actually issue a DORA designation to each of the qualified permit holders located within that DORA district. So as I said, and I think everybody has received a copy of the DORA application that Mr. Diorio presented or submitted, but you can see within that there's specific boundaries of the DORA area that are addressed and included. And those are, like I said before, within the Main Street Business Corridor, kind of from South Main Street, from Bitzer Street, and then southeast running along North Main Street to, running north along Main Street to 11th Street. So we have the boundaries that are identified. We have the looking at the number and the type of signage that's going to be designated in the area. We've put together a public safety policy, a sanitation plan, and then kind of have talked about some of the rules and requirements of operating within that DORA, all the way down to what does the signage look like, to what do the DORA cups look like that an establishment would have to issue to somebody that was purchasing qualified alcohol within the DORA. And I say that because there's actually qualified permit holders for an outdoor refreshment area that are there's only certain allowable permit holders to be allowed to issue alcohol within the outdoor refreshment area. Those are an A1 permit, an A1A, an A1C, A2, A2F, or a D-class permit. So, but a D-class permit does not include a D6 or a D8 permit. So I think it's important, just maybe for the record, to reflect the qualified permit holders and what kind of a permit they actually must have.
It's Dominic. I have a quick question. So when you say the D series, so D5 would qualify for that then? D5 license?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Jamie,
yes.
Before you go any further, this is Patrick, and I just want to make sure that because everybody on city council, of course, knows all the streets in North Canton, but the boundary actually that we've proposed at its maximum length is from Bachtel to about 11th Street Northwest. So I think you had said Bitzer, and I was looking through the document, And so there would be a typo that we would need to correct there that
Okay.
Bitzer is actually Bachtel.
Patrick, are you talking one street north of Woodrow?
Yes, what would be it basically from Mama Gazzardi's down to El Rincon.
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
And is there a reason why it doesn't go all the way up to Orion? Is there something that prevents
Well,
that?
Mark, I didn't want to propose the whole thing. A council, it's up to you guys how you want to do it. I had been researching some Doras and some other communities that are similar to North Canton. So like, for instance, Old Hilliard has very much a main street that's reminiscent of North Canton with homes that are converted into businesses and some commercial establishments that look like commercial establishments and the like. And, it kind of comes down into the marking. You have to mark when, someone is coming into the Dora or when someone is leaving the Dora. And then you got to have a sanitation plan. And I really liked what Old Hilliard had done. They combined the signage and the sanitation plan into one plan. And they have some very nice steel black powder coated trash receptacles that on one side of the receptacle is a sign that says you're entering the Dora district. And on the other side, it says you're leaving the Dora district. So it avoided having to put up street signs and poles in people's yard and stuff like that. So it comes down to, like all the intersections coming off of Main Street where people could actually say walk down and turn left on 5th or left on 7th or right on 6th. All those have to kind of be marked with the signage. So that's why I kind of just stopped where we were, but we can extend it to however far you want, given, 150 acres is a lot of acreage when it's narrowly defined like this. So
Yeah,
I was just thinking of I was just thinking of the businesses that are out of that, how they feel they might be out of, why are they left out? And secondly, how does that promote more as we come around if we don't have areas that are all inclusive of it up and down the Main Street? That's all the reason I was thinking about that.
Yeah, good point, Mark. Dominic here.
I think we can amend this if we so choose.
yeah, this was
Right.
for really discussion purposes to kind of, I've been working on it for, many months with Nate and his team. And this is really just kind of the first exposure to city council. So it's, not something that you necessarily have to, come to terms with tonight. We can discuss it again at another committee meeting, but I just wanted to get the concept introduced to everybody first.
Patrick.
Pat, I think one thing too, this is Jamie again, that is important for council to recognize is that North Canton, based on its population, can establish one designated outdoor refreshment area. So if we look at, and like was said earlier, you can look at expanding it, but, we've got one Dora that we can set up within the city limits. We have to have at least 4 qualified permit holders, which we've identified those. And we have that 150 or fewer contiguous acres as our parameters. But, we can't look at setting up a Dora designation in, the north side or the east side and one on the west side. So, looking at that map and making sure that it encompasses the footprint, that council feels best fits, what it would like for the designation is important because we can't go and set up, 2 or 3 more of these Doras.
Patrick, it's Dom. Patrick, is this sort of like a little segment of the entertainment district type thing?
Yeah.
Or is this totally separate?
It's totally separate. I mean, the boundaries could overlap.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, that if we're going to kind of consider, or even if Mark says like we go a little further north, hypothetically, just so that we have it. But if not, is it hard to amend it and add more square footage on heading north if we needed to?
So
I don't believe it's difficult to amend.
yeah, Pat, this is Nate. It's Dominic, we could add on to it. With the restriction we have is it can't be any more than 150 acres. But
got it.
We can go back at if you pass it originally, and we decide later we want to add on to it, we could certainly do that and include more parcels in it if we need to. Yep.
Thank you.
No problem.
Hey, this is Daryl, Nate and council. You know, one of the things we might want to consider, because this is actually something new for the community, we may want to approach this with a degree of sort of measured caution. And if we find that it begins to work next year, we should be able to get this done pretty quickly. I'm just trying to think how many, you know, as you move north up above Mama Gazzardi's, you know, the only other places you've got with alcohol would be really up near Orion, correct?
Right. Yeah, TD's
That's
tailgate.
that's going to that may push us well out of the 150 acres.
Yeah, and Daryl, to your point, one challenge we have is that it's a contiguous boundary, so
Right.
we can't kind of, you know, we talked a year and a half ago or more about the DRD, which is continuous. Essentially the parcels have to be next to each other, so that does limit us a little bit in how far we can take it, since we can only put 150 acres in it.
All right.
Thank
We can have
you.
another discussion on that. Let's move on.
Yeah, good
We
point.
can have a good discussion.
Absolutely.
Good point, gentlemen, ladies.
Okay, does anybody have any more questions for Nate or Jamie on kind of how this thing works?
So I have a quick question. This is Dom again.
Yes.
So like in Canton, for example, like when you have First Friday, and let's say they have that designated area there. I know some of the vendors that have to buy the cups that the city provide in groups of 100 or 500. I think it was 500. So sometimes I hear people complaining like you got to pay $10 a cup. And then, you know, so I guess there's a flexibility that the vendors that are participating in the plan can charge something per cup. And then you get the cup and then you just use it at different locations. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a limit on what we can charge, or is that like at the market bears what the market bears?
I don't believe
No,
There-
I don't
there's
believe
nothing-
there's
yeah.
a,
there's
Yeah.
nothing in the legislation. There's nothing in the state law that dictates what that is. It really is up to
Mhm.
you all to figure that out.
Got it. Thank you.
And that's a
So-
million.
If I may, to answer Dominic's question, as our ordinance is currently written, the city may charge qualified permit holders the cost of producing the cups plus a 10% fee, and the profits from that 10% fee must go back into supporting the DORA.
Got it. And then who's responsible for the signage? Would that be the city or the vendors?
Yes,
The city.
city.
Okay, got it.
And Dominic, I just want to be perfectly clear, we cannot put your face on those cups.
That's
Or
okay.
video.
I know
Or
what you're
video,
thinking.
Right.
Hey, well, we could promote different amenities in the city and then, you know, it's a win-win for the city. And I don't care about me. I'm just talking about the city, man. We're all about the city right now.
And I think the other thing is this, and Jamie and Nate, as other businesses within the existing DORA would come in and secure a liquor permit. For example, if something would happen over at Hoover, we can fold them in through legislative action into the DORA, correct?
Yeah, correct.
yep,
That's
that's
awesome.
correct.
That's
Mhm.
fantastic,
So-
guys.
So that
Because
this
they're
is just-
within the boundaries, right?
that is correct.
Because they're within the
Yes.
boundaries, right?
Yes.
Mhm. And in the application, we've actually identified that Hoover Town Center has a couple of permits that are pending.
Perfect.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you've got 3 flagged, correct? That looks
Um,
the map.
I have a D5 and a D6 pending on
Oh,
Hoover
nice.
Town Center that I was able to find.
I
Okay,
just
they're
put-
there.
On the map, I just put 3 markers to represent the whole frontage because they have
Okay.
permits for all addresses on that side.
Okay.
Right. So
You know,
just
so-
as a
so- I was
clarification,
just
how
gonna-
many acres are we looking at right here, just so we know? How many
56.
acres is what, right now? That's
Oh, my.
56 right there?
Yep.
So we have a lot of room to add, is what.
We can go
I'm
south,
saying.
north. Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Right.
This is great.
When I said about that, I worry about what happens to areas like the Kmart property or the post office someday. All those areas that are not even developed, those are areas that might want this. So,
Well, I mean, even the fire department, if they ever get a safety service center, what's going to happen to that building? Maybe that would be a pub or something.
well, that's within it already.
Right. So I think
That's already within.
I think it's a fabulous plan, personally.
Well, Mark, you bring up a good point, and I think you're looking at the DORA as a potential economic development tool, that some of those properties, on Main Street, north of Viking, could be ripe for redevelopment for the right type of business, where this DORA would add some meaning to their bottom line.
Mm-hmm. We can have
So
that discussion then. Yes.
It's kind of, where do you want this type of growth to occur? That's the other thing that you're thinking about.
Right. I'm even thinking of Waterside. Anything that's open.
Yeah. Great one.
There's also a reporting and maintenance requirement for the DORA. So every 5 years, the legislative authority reviews the operation of the area and can continue the operation or dissolve the area. So, that's something else that might give some flexibility that, it might be hard to envision what's going to happen development wise in the next 10 years. But, if it has to be reviewed every 5 years, does that give opportunity to the city to be able to modify the footprint of the DORA as things change? So that might give some flexibility to not feel like you have to get everything right now.
This is Stroya. What does it take to change? Let's say there's development up and down, I don't know, Maple or something like that. Is it just a vote on council? Is it a vote of registration? Is there a cost to amending it?
It's
so forth.
So, Councilman Stroya, this is Nate. It would essentially be a vote of council. You could go back and amend the map to include other areas, as long as we're within that 150 acre limit and as long as it's contiguous to all the other properties.
Gotcha. Thank you, fraternity brother Nate Green.
Absolutely, fraternity brother. That's right.
Brother in a bond.
That's right.
Well, this is Daryl. Are there any other questions for Nate or Jamie or Pat? If anything else, any other questions at this time?
I'm good. Thank you. It's Dominic.
Okay. Here's where we are now is that we have received an application from the administration, and Jamie and Nate jump in here if I get things mixed up. But if we're going to, what we need to do is, there's a timeline on this, and if we're going to, if we're want to work on this or to have it, we need to get started with the approval process. And that means that we've got to publish over 2 weeks, twice, notice that we've received the application. We have to publish it in a repository. And then once we've got that, then I think what we really need to come up with tonight is, do we want to have council consider some enabling legislation to approve the application? Because if that's the case, once we've done our 2 publications, then we have to publish dates for the council votes. And the clerk has identified 3 dates that we could consider this: the 28th of September, the 12th of October, and the 26th of October. So if we want to proceed, I guess we need to make that determination this evening.
This is Dominic. I'm in for it.
And again, I
As long as-
am open, and I just want to make absolutely clear, I think everybody's open to amending this as it moves along.
Yeah, as long as we can talk about the where it goes, sure, let's move.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay.
Absolutely.
You know, and let me just add one more thing too. And you know, over the last year, I think it may be good to just pull up a minute and think about what we've achieved for Main Street and what we're doing. We've reestablished a CRA. We've put in place a DRD, thanks to Montrose, both of those to Montrose. Now we've got this DORA moving to be put in place. That's pretty astonishing when you think about our accomplishments over the last year to help Main Street grow. And I think this will be a good tool for those restaurants. You know, it's how unfortunate is that the Main Street Grill closed. Now, maybe this might inspire a new owner to take a second look at the location, which is exactly what we want.
Yep, I agree, Daryl.
Okay.
That's it. That's the idea.
Okay, so let's do this, Ben. Let's map out the process. Let's get the notices published for the application. And then we need to get, at the appropriate time, notice published for council consideration, September 28th, October 12th, October 26th. Okay? Now, just before we go, one more housekeeping thing on the application. We do need to make some changes. They caught one on page 4 where it's referenced as Bitzer instead of Bactel. And I think on page 3, you use Harmon. I think that is the wrong street. So would you verify that?
We'll verify
Yeah.
that and make sure we have the streets. No problem there.
Okay. All right.
Well, then, should we talk about sometime soon where we want this to go before you start putting streets in? Or is this just to move it along and we will amend it later?
These streets are the current boundaries, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
Bitzer was incorrect. We meant Bactel. And I think Harmon is a reflection of Bitzer, the Bitzer boundary. So we just need to check those and make sure that the streets are proper. And again, on page 3 and page 4 of the application.
Mark, it's Dom. So they have 50 acres earmarked right now. So we have
We
up
get
to
it.
150.
Yeah.
So we can go a lot of different ways, I guess.
Yep.
Well, that brings up a question. Hey, Jamie
Yes.
and Nate. All right, so
Yeah.
I'm on page 3 referencing what Daryl said. And I think the Harmon Street was trying to look like it was trying to correspond, I'm guessing, where Bitzer Street, you know, and those both running all the way up to 11th, but Bactel, however you say it, is on both sides of Main down there. So it would be there north. So my question is the 56 acres reflective of what I've drawn on the map, or is the 56 acres reflective of what's listed as the boundaries in section 2 on page 3?
It should be what's identified on the map because those are all of the parcels that we're looking to include.
I looked up every one of those parcel numbers and that's what I emailed to you. So,
Yeah.
so sounds like it's just a typo that we got to fix.
Yeah, we'll verify.
I don't know if we don't even have an 11th Street, do we?
We do. It's actually marked between Mama Gazzardi's and the first property south. It's
Okay.
not a finished street, but it is dedicated as 11th Street in the books.
Okay, that's pretty random. All right.
It's an old lane, Mark, that
Yeah, it
used
is.
to go, you used to go back behind all those properties on Woodrow.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost
That was
goes
where
back to
Where
those
the
woods
drive-in
back.
theater was. Yeah,
Yes. Do you know about the theater?
I grew up here. Oh, yeah.
I know, Mark. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry.
This is a family meeting.
Got caught back there a few times, probably.
All right, so I think we're good to go. Ben, you've got your instructions, correct?
Correct.
All right, and we'll have a revised version of the application for us for our next meeting. All right. Next items on our agenda are B, C, D, and E, and these are proposed changes to Part 13 of our codified ordinances that deal with the residential building code. And rather than try to muddle my way through this, I'm going to turn this over to Marty because he has requested these changes. So Marty, would you like to proceed?
Yes, sir. Okay, so before you, there are 4 items there. And with this, along with 2 other items that I have later on, realizing that it is a lot of information, I plan on providing the 30,000-foot view of the revisions while highlighting some of the key changes as well. I'm happy to answer any questions specifically, either go into more detail in any particular subject matter, or even come back at another council meeting and provide more detail. So for the first item here is retitling and making some revisions to 1301, essentially adopting the state of Ohio residential code and the building code of Ohio as well. Currently, we have an outdated reference there to the residential code. If enacted as proposed, essentially it wouldn't need to be changed. As soon as the state changes their building codes, it would automatically become law. And of course, we're required to enforce those codes, being a certified department. That's those first 2 sections. There are references in there to the building permits, particularly under the residential section as the current language is. However, particularly for commercial, we don't really have any good legislation that requires permits or even defines how we handle permits. Although we go into more detail there in the next item, C, this kind of sets us up for that change. I'd also like to point out the address identification under section 1301.03. This was drafted in coordination with the fire department. As it was brought to our attention, there are many houses in the city that don't have proper address notification on the building. While, of course, our emergency responders are very familiar with the city and more than likely will respond very quickly without those addresses, the concern really comes into where we reach out for mutual aid to some of the departments that aren't as familiar with the city. So this section, it gives specific criteria of what's expected for addressing, particularly as the building codes that we just talked about really do leave it to the local jurisdictions to better define what's needed for the area. So the other change we have there, essentially, we still charge fees for the plan review. One clarification on that, and I would like to amend if you do choose to bring it to City Council, is on that second paragraph, include the words after the initial review, or to that effect, all fees incurred by the city shall be reimbursed by the applicant. And that would either be for hourly plan reviews or any other specialty plan reviews that may take place. That may even be postage if we send out plans in the hard copy form. The rest of this really is just clarification when we have the projects, which they're not maintaining. Most of the projects, they do keep them up. Most of the time wouldn't see that coming into effect. And all the strike are either conflicts with the state code.
The state of Ohio and Rolls-Royce created this development.
All right, somebody needs to mute, please.
I think it was Steph. She's muted.
I was muted.
Okay. So as I mentioned on the strikeouts, they're either redundant or conflicts or outdated information and no longer needed. That's my summary on item B. If there's any questions, do you want me to run through the whole list? Or?
Yeah, why don't you just go through the whole thing and then are there any questions on item B? Seeing none, then move on to C.
Okay. So 1302 was that section I referenced earlier where we identify the permits, how we handle those permits, when they expire, applications where we talk about change in plans. I want to show particular note to, it was 1302.04. This gives a list of determinations which must be made by the chief building official. And essentially, if these determinations aren't made, a permit cannot be issued. In item 1 there, A1, that is, essentially, if the project doesn't meet the local ordinances, then the building official shall not issue it. I mean, it seems common sense, but we need that kind of language to lawfully withhold a permit. Second item really is talking about the zoning code. This came about with some other concerns with the projects and noting the zoning requirements, particularly driveways. And the other language we put in there was really talking about item 4, for example, talks about wetlands, and 5 is we're talking about floodplain, and then item 6 is the fees. The other item to point out is the next section, 1302.05, and essentially this would give some latitude to withhold the permits if, say, council in the future decided to enact legislation that might restrict certain types of construction. This would withhold that permit until the legislation was finished. We also added some additional language here to clarify the stormwater quality and to help that coordination with Stark Soil and Water. They have very good language in there. What we don't have is that integration between Stark Soil and Water and the building department. Same thing on the utility side. That's those next few sections. Again, we define where a stop work order may happen, and this gives the authority to do so when they're not doing the work correctly, or made changes to the plans, maybe made the addition larger and didn't revise the plans, or they haven't got any of the permits. So, and the last part on that is the penalties, which seem to be similar to other ordinances where essentially that first violation is a misdemeanor. After that, it ratchets up to a misdemeanor of the first degree. And the second half of that authorizes the law director to seek other legal action as deemed necessary, such as an injunction. And the last sentence on that allows that any costs associated with that would be recovered through the auditor's office. Now, of course, that would take coordination with the auditor's office there. So essentially, that is item C. There's any questions there?
No.
Okay.
And this is Patrick, just as background, why you're getting all of this. I mean, Martin has been working with administration for the last several months, and he's come to us, I guess, in part because, COVID has, given us opportunity in some instances to have a little more time to dig into all the various things that we've tasked him with, like things that haven't been done for a very long time, if ever, in this department, and bringing us up to speed by, making sure our stuff is adopted to the Ohio Building Code or the revised code or Stark Soil or the fire department. The utilities department is just integrating all the things that needed to be done. So he's been working on this for most of the summer. As we've come out of that, we've got together, reviewed all this stuff. And this is, a wave of things to come. There's more that we're kind of parceling out, trying not to overwhelm council with everything all at one time. So just give you a little background as to why we're doing it right now.
Pat, I think it's great. And I think it's, you've used this time and we've needed more meat kind of in some of these instances. And I mean, we do have those times when we just haven't been able to react and respond. And if we're going to move forward on this, I think it's just the perfect timing to do that. So thank you, Barton, for digging into this. And hopefully we can get some more things done with it and be more accountable.
My pleasure. Thank you. And that's a good point too, is much of this wouldn't have a whole lot of impact on the current construction. What it does allow us to do is where we have those that aren't following the rules or doing something wrong. And you said it, Beth, it gives us the tools to address that.
Yeah. And we have, our constituents do call, and we haven't had the means. So we've had to have this air pocket contained test to say, let's move this forward. And we haven't been able to. And so we've been sitting on a lot of properties, I think, that really need some work. So we're going to be calling you.
Anytime. I'm glad to help.
All right,
So-
Marty, what's next?
Item D. Item D was, it was hard not to update some outdated fees while we're in here updating ordinances anyway in Title 13. So item D really is adjusting the demolition permit fees. So on the first item it doesn't get us up to, the time that it takes on this. Of course, there is some thought here that, we should keep these still relatively low. So we're encouraging the demolition. So I think we still do that, but also charge a fee where, it's a fee that's worth charging as opposed to we're spending more money collecting the fee and still not covering any of the inspections and plan reviews and whatnot. And that's what this does.
Marty, I noticed that there's some big percent increases on that. And I tried to look at other cities, what there were, and I couldn't find them. Where does this stand to the average cities as far as these fees? Like what's Canton's? What's some of the other ones? Because I couldn't find it. I got on the internet and I still couldn't find them when I went into their websites.
Yeah, the fees were all over the board on that. I don't have my notes right here. And that's one of those things I'd be happy to gather all that, bring it back at a next council meeting, as you see.
Yeah, because these are pretty big percentages, 150%. I mean, these are and I'm sure we were behind the times, in many ways, but.
Well, was there a guideline that you follow?
We need to be able to at least tell people this is a standard. We can't be $100 above everybody. Like, why? Because we want to make up on something. So I'd like to get a reference point to these, if you don't mind.
Great idea.
Absolutely. We can do that. And essentially, in drafting the fees, it was in addition to looking at some of the other jurisdictions, we're also looking at the time that's involved with the plan review part of it, the correspondence, as well as the inspections. In the commercial properties in particular, we get into the EPA requirements of the review for the asbestos, handling the paperwork on the asbestos reports. We have that whole NESHAP program that we do get involved with, particularly to keep our constituents out of trouble on that. That's where that fee was significant. There is multiple inspections depending on the size of the building, of course. And then, as I mentioned, that plan review of looking at the structure being demolished. And then we also get in the pedestrian protection on the commercial side. We're also looking at that to make sure that they're not causing any hazard there as well. But
yeah, and I think just to weigh in a little bit on that, and Mark's points are valid. I would just caution everybody to keep in mind that, just from looking at other areas and what they charge doesn't necessarily tell you the whole story. They may not do as many inspections on the process as we do. They may just handle it entirely differently, and they're able to charge a different amount. In having met with Martin, we went around this, quite a bit to try to keep that incentive there. But let's also keep in mind, this isn't really something that happens a lot in North Canton, demolition of properties. It's something that maybe in the city of Canton is more in need thereof, and therefore they may be even incentivizing it even more. But whatever we end up running short, keep in mind, council, that the general fund has to subsidize wherever we're short. But Martin, if you could get that information for Mark to the best of your ability, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so item E addresses the contractor registration. Essentially, and what I'd like to do is couple this item with what was it? Item B.
3B.
Yep, 3B. Thank you. As if this one for some reason falls through, we'd also need to drop 3B as well, as these are working in coordination with each other. The main effect on this one of the things this new language does, besides adding a new chapter in Title 13, is we've done away with the bond requirement. The current legislation requires $1,000 bond for all contractors. And, in the research of reviewing the history on these bonds, I could not find any history where a bond was ever leveraged. And conversely, I've received many complaints from the contractors that they're paying $100 for this bond. And in many cases, some jurisdictions require it, some don't. But nonetheless, they're having to pay this $100 bond and nobody gets anything out of it. So that is not proposed in this language.
Good, fine.
Marty, Dominic
Yes.
here.
Yep.
So like on these bonds or on the fees, would that be like for a 1-year period if someone's working on these demos or anything? Or do you pay it one time and you can use it for several years? Or is it once a year, 12-month cycle?
So on the demolition permit, that was specific to demolishing a structure. So that's site specific. So every structure that you tear down, you would pay that fee. So that's not tied to the contractor registration, though, to clarify. Those were two separate.
I think what Dominic is asking, Marty, is that under the contract registration, if it's a contractor, say it's a roofer, and he's coming in to get registered, did this bond cover 1 year, a part of a year, depending on when you registered, or did it go for multiple years?
Oh, my apologies, Dominic. I misunderstood. So the bond requirement in the current legislation, that was annually. Every year they had to renew that bond or get a new bond, really. The other thing to note with that is those bond certificates, and this really was not the reason behind it. The reasons I just cited were the main reasons. But, in looking at it, we also realize that these certificates have hindered our process improvement of scanning documents. These certificates are embossed. We have to keep the hard copy. So we've not been able to get rid of these documents. So this would also help with our filing and streamlining our internal processes as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So the registration fee, that remains the same. There was no proposed increase in the fee. We do define different contractors, from the general contractor to the trade contractor and the engineering contractor. And the other change in this is the current legislation requires liability insurance. However, it doesn't define the amounts of those liability insurance. So we do define the liability insurance, which seems to be about average of what the contractors are carrying anyway.
Is that the $1 million liability?
That is, right.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yep. Let's see. So the other change in this was, as far as appeals, we've revised that and proposed it to match all the other appeal processes that we have, and that is the Zoning Board of Appeals would hear any appeals that are brought forward. But again, this also gives us some language in there if the time does come where we do need to revoke someone's license, we have some procedures to do that here. So essentially that's the contractor registration part. And then in 909, is it okay if I jump to 909, the changes on that? Okay.
Before we do that, and we move out of this committee, does anyone else have any additional questions on B, C, D, and E? If not, Ben, would you draft the appropriate legislation for a first reading of each of these for our next council? First reading only. Okay, Marty, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. So essentially 909, we strike all the language that would conflict with the proposed language from 1310 in there. So this one's really a quick and easy one. Was there any questions on that portion?
Nope.
Jeff, do you want while you're in street now, you want to let Marty and Dominic go on to A?
Yeah.
Pat, before we do, I'd like to ask for an amendment to our agenda this evening under 1, Community and Economic Development, to include item 1F. And that is to schedule a public hearing for zoning changes for outdoor dining. Can I get a motion?
Foltz motions.
Got a second?
Was that Matt? Did you second?
Yep.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Okay,
All right.
just briefly, as you all may remember, the council sent to the Planning Commission 2 changes in our zoning ordinance regarding outdoor dining. Those were ordinances 47/2020 and 48/2020. The Planning Commission met last week and after discussion concurred with those changes. And so the next step for us is to set a public hearing. And after the notice is published, the earliest possible date is October 26th. So are there any objections to doing that? I guess not. Mr. President, could we get a motion and a second to set that date?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Shredded motions.
Foltz seconds.
Seconds.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Okay, Ben, take care of that then. Thank you.
Before or after the regularly scheduled meeting?
Let's do it. Let's do it before.
Yeah.
Okay, that concludes community economic development, and we'll go ahead and head into street and alley. Marty, you've already handled B.
So streets and alley A, Marty's there to chime in, but basically those are some revisions to talk about the specifications for the road, milling, different procedures to make sure that everybody's stepping up to the standard that we need here in North Canton. Marty, you can chime in on that A.
Absolutely. Thank you. And this draft was in coordination with building, engineering, and administration. And one of the items that spurred this change was the option of bonds as opposed to the cash deposits, and help better defining those procedures. And similar to the other ordinances, we did take this opportunity to update the legislation to the current needs for the construction in the public right-of-way particularly. One of the items I'd like to point out here is under the exceptions, we specifically are proposing an exception under 90702 item D, and accepting basic simple sidewalk replacements from the deposit or bonding requirements here, in hopes of, again, incentivizing the replacement of the sidewalks and keep everything safe there and keep that process simple as possible. And I will turn it over to Rob or Patrick if they have anything further to add on that.
Yeah, I would. So I think one of the important things to note, since we just got done talking about eliminating bonds in a previous section, and now we're talking about allowing for bonds in this section, the different types of bonds. And this particular bond is a performance bond, and it protects the city. The other bonds that were part of the contractor registration did nothing to protect the city, nor should they. Those are matters between the two willing parties that enter into a contract. This is, so you say you have a utility company that comes into the city and they want to dig up our road, our right-of-way, the sidewalk, the curb, the gutter, to do whatever is it repair or upgrade that they need to do. And in the past, we would require them to post a cash deposit. And there's a big problem with posting cash deposit. First of all, it requires calculations to determine what it is, how much cash. Then it's handling a certified check, money order, cash, and that puts us into, receipting it once in the building department, documenting it over to the finance department where they check the numbers and then rerun the totals, and then rerun it to take it to the bank where the bank reruns the totals. And we end up using a lot of time just receipting the money in and documenting where all it goes. And then we work it in reverse. At some point later, when that construction project is completed and it's to our satisfaction of the engineer, and we release the cash deposit, we have to do the whole process in reverse. And it's very inefficient, where we could be more easily and better for the utility company to just post a bond for the project. And then if something happens that it isn't met to our satisfaction and the utility company isn't going to make it right, then we can go to the bonding company and seek a payout under the bond. So it seems to be a much more efficient way for everybody to handle it at really a lower cost, because as we look at, a particular company that we're working now with, a number of different spreadsheets going back and forth, trying to figure out on these cash deposits, when were they done? When are they owed a refund? And the bond would simply just expire after a year, after the time that the engineer specifies that it needs to be on hold for. So that's kind of the background utility companies, coming to us on that. And it's anybody basically that's opening up the road. Doesn't necessarily have to be a utility company. That's just the most recent example. Rob, did you want to jump in on there?
I think you covered it along with Martin quite well, Patrick. One of the things too is we had added another 90 days for the amount of time till we would release the bond. The ordinance did read 90 days before, but I'd really like to see that trench, if they're doing a gas line, let's say, underground trench, I really want that to go through a freeze thaw cycle. They could do a very good job of compaction, but that one season is really going to show us. So that proposing to up that to 180 days or 6 months, so that should get it to freeze thaw to get a better idea of that. So not release it too early.
Okay. Dominic, we're on to C.
Sidewalks. So this has a lot of information pertaining to installation of sidewalks, existing sidewalks, new sidewalks, voluntary participation if money's available. And then like if we were talking about where we might want to add sidewalks to make it a little more connective, they have their 2 to 3 criterions you have to meet. And Marty, I know you were pretty serious into this, Pat and Rob. So if you guys want to chat on that a minute.
Well, I think we should first note that we did have some, initial inquiries, back early on after council, passed this last year, and as we got into the beginning part of this year. And I think on several of those properties, we sent out our respective personnel from the building department to inspect and certify that the sidewalks did meet the criteria that was established. But then, COVID hit, and as part of that process, that the finance director asked us to go through, because we weren't really quite sure what we were going to be getting into back in March. So all of these types of capital improvement projects, we just put on hold. And we did have money put in the budget for sidewalks as we went into 2020, but we put all that on hold pending that coming out. So at this stage, where we are in the game, it's something that we are budgeting for, or trying to budget for next year to anticipate that this would go forward. There's all kinds of different, marketing that can go towards and getting the word out. I've had a inventory done of all the prospective sidewalks that tentatively meet the criteria. Done that for all 4 wards. And, it could start with, marketing to those groups, that group of people as a possibility. So we've tried to get prepared for a better rollout on this, just based on what we had done before. But, it's up to council if they want to go beyond that. As we've talked before about if we want to go forward as a city and put a sidewalk on a particular street, to the extent that there may be some individuals that are not willing to participate, there's some extra steps that we have to go through then in order to be able to move that project forward. So we need to kind of be taking those steps if that's something that we're going to be doing as we get into next year. But that's kind of the overview. Dominic.
Patrick, Dom here. So what would you say is our allocation towards the sidewalk fund going forward for the budget, I guess?
Well, it's, Gina and I are working on the budgets. This is kind of our, I think each of our second and third go around with this, and we're now fine tuning that. We were in budget meetings for about 6 hours today, and we're scheduled for that tomorrow and Wednesday to see if we can, narrow the gap. But tentatively, This is subject to, of course, council's final approval, but tentatively we've scheduled like 50,000 for 2020.
And how much do we have in the account now that we didn't use because of COVID?
Well, we had budgeted 100.
So we'll have 150 by 2021.
No, when the calendar year clock strikes, any monies that are not spent go back to the general fund, which they hence came.
So
it's zero-based budgeting. We start over at zero.
Yeah.
Is there any way, and I don't know how everybody else feels, but I think the thinking was why we were wanted to talk about this is, along with the North Main, South Main corridor, we want to make sure we have a walkable community in some of the areas, like for example, up Glenwood or maybe Lindy Lane and some of those areas tying to the parks, to the schools, to the main corridor. So, yeah. I mean, Mark and I have talked about this a lot, and I know Doug's interested in it and whoever else chimes in.
Dom, can I say a few things with that?
Go ahead, buddy.
I did some research on the internet here. So since we put this out, because we've been talking about this a long time, and I wanted to see how other communities pay for their sidewalks. And yes, most of them pay it similar to we do. The financial burden is on the resident and to install and take care of it. And this usually doesn't support, what is needed, what we want in our community in many ways. It becomes, looks terrible. And many, this is what they're saying, and it looks terrible until it gets to a point where something has to be forced to do. So here's a few examples that I saw on the internet of communities that are trying to pay for sidewalks in different ways. And we can look at these and even combine methods if we're looking for, a program to kind of put in place to kind of balance, take money from here or there or whatever. Here's some of the ways that some people pay. And I'm not saying that we do these, I'm just giving, food for thought brainstorming. First of all, one of them is find the money somewhere else in the budget. That's maybe something can wait a year. We spent a lot of money on maybe something, or maybe a whole road that can be just patched, and then puts it into a sidewalk somewhere. Secondly, included every year, just like we do our street budget, try to offset it with grants. Rob's the grant expert there. I don't know what's available there. Third, put a street levy out. This is just something that some people do, to care for these issues. This could be a very, very small thing. Fourth, some cities use sidewalk district fees on the property taxes. Okay, I'm not saying that we do that, but I'm just telling you what people do. Another one is a reasonable charge for a fee for homeowners for city to repair it. It's usually a % per linear feet. For example, $100 per pad, and then city picks up the other. The other one here, city can tax deductible it. Make it a tax deductible for the people within the city when they put money towards these kind of things. Another one, this is the last one, so I don't want to just bore you guys. Any road with existing sidewalks that undergoes a street resurfacing gets a sidewalk review and replace the needed slabs. Every time you do a road and it has a sidewalk, it goes through a review and those slabs get added to that budget. So, there are a lot of ways we can look at this. We just need to come up with a plan. And what a lot of the cities are doing is they create like a pedestrian master plan. And I know that's what Pat kind of put together. I thought that plan last year was a good plan. We just need to kind of work it through so we get what we want. We need some new sidewalks, not just replacing. But we need to complete the inventory. And it sounds like Pat has done that, and assess the priorities based on, the location, public right-of-ways, schools, desired walk venues. And then, create this 3, 5, or 10-year plan based on our walking needs and our traffic to start setting it up in our budget. So what we want to do, we've been talking about a lot of these for years. And then for repair of existing sidewalks, it's kind of a different also is however we pay for them. Every year we do we build up that fund, and 1 to 3 times a year, we put it out like Pat wanted to do to get a bid so we can get a better price and bundle them all together and get them done. So I just, going through this, there's so many ways, and we just talk about 1 or 2 ways. We need to put together a plan and get some things done here. And if it costs us to put some things together, well, we're going to get what we put into it. We're going to get a nice newer sidewalks. People walk into where we want them to go, because in many ways, sidewalks are a community resource, and more than just the enhancement of somebody's property. Nobody says, "Oh, my property looks great because my sidewalk looks great." That's not necessarily the reason we put sidewalks. They're a community resource, like Dom said, that you can walk and make it a walkable place, get to the park, get to the shops, that kind of thing. So those are from food for thought. Thanks for the time. I'll stop talking now.
Thanks, Mark. That's very good input. Anybody else?
Yeah, Dom, it's Fultz.
Yes, Doug.
Hey, Mark, that was great. You reviewing that, I appreciate it. And I think we come back and we've talked about the history of this for my tenure. For 26 years, we talked about sidewalks, and I don't think anybody's ever taken advantage of paying 50% to have theirs replaced. So, and not less, Pat, you can chime in if there's something on the books this year before COVID struck and we kind of.
Yes, sir. There were nobody that approached us directly, although I did have a contractor who was doing some sidewalk work that expressed that his client was unawares of this city program. And I've talked to, some constituents that have had some of the bad sidewalks to see if they are aware of this program, and the answer is no. So I'm thinking part of it is to what Mark is saying is that, we need, or Dominic, both, that, we need to get the word out a little better if we want people to take advantage of it. But to Mark's point of trying to prioritize and strategize where you're going to spend your limited resources, I think having a plan, whether it's, as he said, a 5-year or a 10-year plan, whatever it is, that we have that plan and we work towards that plan.
Yeah.
Patrick. Go ahead, Mark.
No, it's Doug. Yeah. And just a follow up. Yeah, I think they're two separate things. East Hill and East Maple, we got a major majority grant to pay for those, and they weren't there before, and that's great. We're connecting. If we're talking about other streets, Glenwood, Lindy Lane, we're talking about putting in new sidewalks and not charging any of the residents for this, I believe, because that's the way our existing sidewalk policy ordinance are written now. Discussion point, in my view, they're separate, and we could put sidewalks there. But when you go down Woodrow or parts of Portage or others, and they're in every ward, you probably have a lot. I just looked today. There's at least 25 to 30 slabs of sidewalks that don't meet our codes.
Yeah.
And not to throw any residents, not to say go out and write up letters and send them right now, because I don't think we're consistently been doing that. But those are the existing sidewalks that do need some attention. So how are we going to address that? 50% doesn't seem to, but whether they knew about it or not, we're not capturing new improvements in those neighborhoods. And I think we got to figure out how to do that, because I think if you're going to put new sidewalks in where they don't exist, you better have a program, and maybe it's free too, to replace some of these old sidewalks that someone did pay for or someone repaired through the years. And I think as a secondary point, when you're looking at existing sidewalks, you're talking about what are the reasons for the sidewalks to heave up, or why is there disintegration of existing sidewalks? Is it age? And probably the ones on Woodrow are more tree driven, as far as the roots being, the trees being planted in the grass lawn strip, and then, under the power lines, and maybe they weren't the right tree for that area to begin with. So that's a whole nother discussion with that. So I just want to be sensitive to that. I'm not going to vote, hey, let's put new sidewalks in Glenwood or some other place. I think I would vote for it if there's a fair policy for the existing sidewalks to deal with some of these other issues. That's my input. And how do we get there, I guess?
Yeah, I agree, Doug. This is Dom again. So what I think, like what Mark was saying, I think we need to, and Pat, maybe you can help us figure this out. We'd like to see if there's a way to do the existing replacement and then new sidewalks. And is there a plan of action? We can work some into the budget over the next year so that we can, after COVID or whatever, we can get aggressive with trying to connect things up over the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, as to address Member Foltz, he indicates really, one of the big triggers is called moral hazard. Mm-hmm. And I think that moral hazard is that when you get in the business of just replacing people's sidewalks that are not taken care of, use the one, say, on Woodrow as an example, you create the moral hazard of, well, why should I bother to do anything about it? Someday the city's going to come along and just fix it for me. And I think that's where Member Sorretta's plan identifies what areas do you want people to be able to walk to and from to. And maybe, Woodrow is maybe that street where the city is going to exercise some sort of direction that we want to connect these areas of town to one another. Not everybody lives on that street, and that the rest of the people that don't live on those streets, do have to maintain their sidewalk and take advantage of a city program to split that. And if they don't, then I think, it comes down to then the code enforcement.
Patrick, if we can come up with a good plan that everybody thinks is viable, I'll be more than happy to create information and promote it or market it, on behalf of the wards, all of our wards, the city, or just however I've been doing the other ones. I'd be more than happy to do that and blast it out there. So once we're ready, we can educate the constituency.
Well, how about I do this? Would council be interested in me getting some information on perhaps an entity that can do a sidewalk walkability study?
Yes, that would be great.
Part of the master plan, I think, Mark, you might be able to help me remember, but I know the master plan addressed wanting more walkability. Right. Maybe we should have somebody draw up that plan. What does that look like? Kind of thing. That's a possibility, or we can try to do it ourselves.
I think we need
Hey, Dom.
Yes.
Hey, Pat.
This is Peter. If I could chime in real quick here, and to Pat, to your point, as far as a walkability study, I wouldn't be opposed to that. I'd like to know what the cost is first.
Yeah.
And one question to you, Pat, as well, regarding the funding in the budget. What was the thought process to reduce that from the $100,000 that we already had encumbered to $50,000 for 21?
Wait till you see the budget.
Okay.
We're dealing in a post-COVID environment, okay. And there's just we're having to make choices, and so we'll certainly be between finance and myself reviewing all that with you. But once we get it to a draft form, then the mayor is this is his budget, and it's reflecting direction that he wants to go, and so we're trying to craft that together and keep in mind our capital restraints that we might have, but ultimately it comes down to city council deciding which direction you want to go.
Okay, gotcha.
Hey, Jeff.
Yes, sir.
Hey, this is Daryl. I think that the fact of the matter is we already know what streets we need sidewalks on. Those are our connectors.
Right.
And we can identify those by traffic volume. And we know where the holes are on those connectors. I think we ought to, my own personal view is we ought to install and repair those at municipal expense because they serve more than a neighborhood, they serve the entire community. Long time ago, when Boyden was administrator, we had a fund that we would go out and we would repair sidewalks, and we just awarded to a contractor, and it was 20 grand or something. They go do it. So I think it's important that we could just really survey our connectors to get started. We just got to Mark's point. You've just got to figure out who's going to pay for it. I think the other question that I've got, and that is this, and maybe this will bring some additional clarity. But as I looked at Bitzer, I'm not sure that if sidewalks are not ADA compliant, the responsibility rests with the property owner.
Didn't they have a
Compliance will
grant
fall-
for that? Hey, Doug,
Hold on, just a second. Let me just finish this thought and we can come back to this. But I'm not sure that ADA compliance falls on the property owner, but it may fall on the city.
Yeah.
In which case, if you're going to get yourself compliant, we're going to have to figure out how we do it.
It's Maple and Seventh.
Doug,
Don, go ahead.
I was just going to
That's it.
say, we had a grant to fix a lot of the streets. That's why they did all the ADA corners. And
Right.
Rob would know more about that. Rob could chime in on this one.
Yeah, one of the things like Portage or repaving, whenever we do a project that's federally funded, the federal funds mandate a condition of that, and they'll cover the cost of upgrading all those curb ramps to ADA standards. You'll notice we did about 80% of them on Portage.
Right.
We have federal dollars, but we were required to do that as a condition of the grant, and they also participated. They covered 80% of that cost.
Can they cover the Main Street corridor or any other side streets in the city?
Only if we have federal funds, and federal funds we have to have on the basically a larger traffic road. So,
Would Glenwood qualify for that?
Yes, Glenwood would qualify for federal funds.
And Lindy Lane is another pretty busy street.
Right, Lindy Lane would not, but we would have to get a grant just for the sidewalk, and it would be tough to, we did it on East Maple, but those are tough to get, but they are out there, the transportation enhancement projects or alternatives, TA, transportation alternatives, to get people walking or biking. The thing is, SCATS pretty much has all their projects spoken for up through 2026.
Oh, wow.
If it's pretty competitive to get those. So we've got our TIP or transportation improvement plan for the county is pretty much set through, it's funded through 2024, and we've got a slate of projects through 2026. So it would be a long time before we could take applications and get a new project on there.
Hey, Dom, I had a few more comments, folks. Hey, Rob, is there a way that you could put an estimate together for, say, a Lindy Lane, a Glenwood, a 7th Street, to know a ballpark what we're looking at as far as new sidewalk installation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a rule of thumb is $10 a square foot for a standard sidewalk. So then our walks are 5 feet wide, so you're looking at $6 a foot. Is a pretty decent number.
How much, Rob? How much, Rob? I'm sorry.
About $50 per linear foot of sidewalk.
Thank you.
That's new installation. What's the cost on replacing deteriorated sidewalk or non-code sidewalk, where it's code violation sidewalk?
I guess that's really going to vary by economy of scale. If we're just doing 3 or 4 spots, we're going to pay a premium to get, a yard of concrete delivered and drive that truck all over. If we're doing a large program, we could probably get that at maybe $6.50, $7 square foot.
Okay,
that sounds good.
That's what I'd like to see, Dominic. If someone would just look at Woodrow, for example, just look at all, and I'm telling you, there's some bad areas there. If you rode your bike,
I agree.
And a wheelchair would have a problem trying to get over. They'd have to go in somebody's grass or figure that out. What would the cost be to do that? And I think that's the way we got to look at it. And the only sticking point is, what do you do with the trees? Because our existing policy indicates the tree removal is the homeowner's responsibility. So is that the caveat? If we're going to do all the sidewalks, say for example Woodrow, and I think the residents have to be contacted. But if we're going to do all the bad ones, and I know East Ohio or Dominion came through and did some of them when we were putting the new lines in up there, so some of it got corrected. But if there's a way to look at that as a package, I think you maybe look at, do we do a Glenwood and then do a Woodrow, or do we do this and then look at some other neighborhood areas? And every ward probably has them, you know what I mean? But Woodrow's so prevalent to me because you see it all the time. It's a beautiful street, and it's a walkable street. So that's my idea on that.
Doug, Dom here. I was just going to say the batching process, you know, if we were to say, okay, we're allocating so many linear feet, and then that would be, we just identify where they are so we can batch it up more efficiently and affordably, you know?
Right. And say we put the price tag on this whole thing, it's $100,000 between this and that. Who knows? Maybe that's where we start and have more discussion on it. Because I don't see anybody taking advantage of this 50%. They haven't done it for years. Now, if you write them up for code violations and force the hand, then maybe that's a different story. But that takes, you know, inspectors to go out there and writing letters and saying, hey, you know, this is your responsibility, and you better cut that tree down because that the root's causing that problem with the tree. So it's you know, there's a lot more to discuss.
Okay, so
especially since we're going to be doing Glenwood Street this year or next year. When is it, Rob? When do we start?
Next year.
Okay. So
next year, at least the water line, and then we'll see what else we can do with it.
Yeah.
That the
Hey,
worst
this is
section.
this is Daryl. Rob, when you do this, I think it's really critical. Not only do you put the cost estimate in, but you need to identify if there's sufficient right of way. Because I know on Lindy Lane, that right of way, I do not believe is wide enough either on the east or the west side to accommodate a sidewalk.
Right, and not only right away width, but what are we looking at? Like Glenwood, if you look on the south side, as we go up that hill, it's a big embankment.
Yeah, you can't do the south side, just the north side. Yeah, you can't do the south side.
Yeah, so I think we need to be aware of the sort of technical limitations of some of these streets.
Yeah, and that's kind of the reason some of these streets don't have it. If it was easy, it probably would have been done long ago.
I agree on
Glenwood. Some of that's true, Rob, but here again, in the history, when we start talking sidewalks, and Daryl remember, in tongue in cheek, it was a heated discussion about sidewalks. But we needed so much curb and gutter at the time, I felt that we had to address some of our storm issues. I think we've caught up with a lot of those. I think the city overall is pretty good with the pavement. And that's a credit to current administration and past, you know, and councils. I think, you know, we're in pretty good shape with our roads overall versus a lot of communities. And we're all thankful for that. But I think now the focus has changed. So that's why I said, let's really look at this seriously for next year if we're going to continue with these policies. You know, let's put something in the budget and get some criteria to go by.
I think the timing would be great. It's Dom regarding tying these up to go along with our Main Street corridor plan that we've been working on for a couple of years now.
Yeah. Okay. Good discussion, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Dom, is that it for you?
Yep, I'm good. Just move it to the schedule to see if we can turn it into reality.
All right. Thank you, sir. Okay, next up, Finance and Property Chairwoman Warren. I think you are still.
Am I on?
Yep, gotcha.
Okay. You can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Well, we had you.
You wanted to say about, hello?
Okay,
yes.
We got you back now.
Okay, sorry about that.
You broke up, Stephanie. I don't think we heard what you wanted to happen.
Oh, sorry. Patrick, do you want to say anything? I'm kind of losing you. I don't want to make everybody.
Yeah, I think this item A is Gina.
Okay, I'm sorry. I asked for Gina. I'm sorry. I didn't know if she heard me or not.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I didn't. I apologize.
Sorry, Gina. No, it's me.
No problem. Okay. Yes, I'll explain the agenda request that we have on here for an ordinance of appropriation increase. We received an additional donations of $7,500 for the farmers market budget. So we would like to appropriate that so that we can spend that to carry that indoors through the year, through fall and winter. And then we also need to increase the general fund law and council departments to pay out the severance on the former law director and also to add the contract for professional legal services that we approved at the last meeting. We need a budget to be able to pay that contract.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions?
No.
Okay, so let's put that on the agenda for next time.
Thank you.
Sorry for the bad connection.
We still got you.
Okay. Okay, so number B, Patrick and I talked earlier, and Patrick, do you want to kind of talk about this and just where we're heading with this and just kind of catching up on it?
Okay, so item B and C. B is on here because of C. So C was, I'll get to it, but just to kind of set up item B. So item C is the next property in the Kmart strategy that we had put forth, 9 months ago, is to get this second of 3 parcels. So of course we've got the first parcel. This is the second one. So knowing that was getting ready to close, we looked at that to see where we were and getting it scheduled and working with the seller on that. And then while we were doing this, we were reviewing where we were with everything else. It's been a very crazy, hectic summer and the like. And so I discovered that item B, which is the purchase of the commercial savings and bank at 1200 North Main Street, that we inadvertently did not bring this to council for council to refer it to the Board of Control for the mayor to enter into this agreement. So we did secure the property. The property is in our name. We are going backwards in time here to try to just resolve this and just have it done. But it is a oversight on our part to not get a legislative request over to council for this. So we've been, I think the Assistant Law Director Terry Moore is on the line if we have additional questions on that. But this is for the, item B is the property for the proposed location for the Public Safety Service Center. So we've acquired 3 of this would be the 3 parcels we have done. And we've been in discussions of late with the 4th property owner, and we believe that could be coming to council shortly. So, and we, as far as the final property then in the Kmart thing, we've are exercising our due diligence at this time. So once that's concluded, we'll know how we're moving forward on that. So we have some time on that. We have, I believe, 120 days to do due diligence there. But in any event, so B came to us because we were getting ready to throw Stratavon on the books, and we looked and said, we inadvertently did not bring this back to council. We closed on the property in the latter part of July.
Can we get an update sometime on the Kmart property before we approve another $150,000 somewhere down the line?
Well, you can call me at any time.
I've been asking for that for how long now? For about a month.
Mark,
hey Pat,
pick up the phone,
Mark,
give me a call. I'll be glad to fill you in.
Pat, Mark, this is Daryl. I want to point something out here just for a second. If anyone needs an update on a parcel and these projects, they should call Pat.
Yeah, I agree.
However, let me just continue here. But everybody needs to understand something. That Pat is the primary point of contact for negotiating these projects. And as that primary point of contact, 2 things happen. Number 1 is he may be under a non-disclosure agreement that prevents him from telling us who that prospect is, A. B is if he's working with a real estate company, that real estate company may be under the same limitation. It may be under a non-disclosure agreement. So number 3 is this, and I've seen this happen twice in the city's history. When the word gets out that we have a company that's looking at locating in North Canton, trust me, the host community will find out. And when that happens, we will have the mother of all catfights. So if you want to talk to Pat, you can get a sense of what's around the margins, all right? But you can't expect him to give you the specifics until he has them, and he's free of the non-disclosure to present us with the opportunity. And we came very close to losing Schroyer, and we came darn close to losing Myers Controlled Product because the word got out.
Mhm.
So I just say this as a caveat. This venue is not the appropriate place to get an update on any project.
Yeah, Daryl,
Yeah,
I would concur with that. And, you know, I talk to Pat, I call him on a weekly basis, basically, and Pat can attest to that. And I ask him what's going on. And I see the same things happening in Canton. And I am at parties and different places where people say, hey, what's going on with that property? Pat, I'm glad that on some situations I have no idea, because I don't want to be put in that situation. And they're not fishing for the betterment of North Canton. They're fishing for the betterment of other communities or what their goals or intentions are. So this is not the forum to discuss that. And we all have a phone, and we can certainly pick it up and call you at any time. You are fabulous about getting back with each and every one of us. And we should know that as business professionals.
I get that. And I know there are people that can't keep their mouth shut. But
Yeah,
we are the
you've
people.
been with that,
I mean,
Mark.
we are the people that are budget the money. We hold the responsibility
And call him.
for whatever happens. I'm not done, Steph. Hold on.
Okay.
If we go ahead, if you want us to know about this, and you got to let us know about this if you want us to vote on this. So we need to know the information. If we know nothing about it, then we're responsible for whatever happens, then shame on us. So we need to know
You're right.
whatever you know to move forward. We just can't say, okay, go ahead and do this. Because we hold the responsibility of the community to know this stuff. That's what we do. That's what we're representing now. So we need to know it one way or the other. So whether I call you or you call me and you tell us about it, but I can't vote on something to approve it unless I know something about it.
Well, this was disclosed to you back when we started the process of what properties we were going after for Kmart. This is one of those. There's nothing that's changed from that time. This is one of three.
There's nothing changed since then? Okay. So
as it relates to this property, the overall strategy was to acquire all three parcels. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, as it relates to the acquisition of the property, we have already gone through this. We're just going back to clean it up. On both of these that we'll be voting on in the special council meeting later. I'm correct in that, correct, Pat?
Yeah.
That is correct.
Yes.
There was an appropriation for this, and there was authorization to go out and get financing for these parcels that were all identified at that time.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
Hey, Mark, Dom here. I think probably what you're concerned, but I got to say it for the recording. What I was going to say is, like, you know, as a marketing person, you know, what concern with any of the properties as we take them on in land banking is that, like what you're saying is you don't want to get stuck with all these properties and we got problems. And so like Patrick is probably working every lead. And what I was talking to him about is like marketing, you know, I just want to make sure, you know, it's getting out there, the World Wide Web to all the people. So we have plenty of opportunities that he's tracking down every lead versus, you know, some of the things I know are private. We can't talk about them publicly yet for those reasons that they mentioned. But yeah, let's just reach out to Pat privately or, you know, on his phone and see what we can figure out.
Okay. All right, so are we good?
We're good.
Okay. All right, and Dom, I'm sorry, Stephanie, that concludes your.
That's it.
Yep, that concludes your committee. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And with that, that concludes the committee of the whole agenda. So I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Volt moves.
Try a second.
Second, Troya.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. And at this time, I'd like to call
to order the North Canton Special City Council meeting, September 21, 2020. The time is 8:41. Opening prayer. Mark, Dominic, anyone?
Yep, sure.
All right, Mark.
Bow our heads. Yep, I'll go ahead. Lord, thank you for bringing us here this evening. Thank you for the responsibility that you have given us. It is an honor to represent the people of our community. Help us to make the right decision. Help us to listen. Help us to gather all the information that we can so we could work in your favor towards this wonderful city that you have given us and the responsibilities. And as we move forward, we thank you for allowing us to work together and be good citizens of our community. In God's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Mark. All right, at this time, if you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States.
To the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, folks. Ben, please call the roll.
Member Stroya?
Here.
Member Soretta?
Here.
Member Revolt?
Here.
Member Fonte?
Here.
Member Warren?
Here.
Member Peters?
Here.
And Member Fultz?
Here.
7 present.
All right, thank you, Ben. Okay, moving on to new business. May I have a motion and a second to add ordinance 63-20 to the agenda under Council Rule 11106C, suspending the requirement for a committee report?
So moved. Revolt moves.
Bolt seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Motion carries. Now, may I have a motion and a second to read by title only, ordinance 63-20?
Revolt moves.
Warren second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Ben?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of North Canton through the Board of Control to enter into an agreement for the purchase of real property located at 1200 North Main Street in the city of North Canton, Stark County, Ohio. Permanent parcel number 9207428. At a cost not to exceed $705,000 and declaring the same to be an emergency.
All right. And Chairwoman Warren, if you wouldn't mind, I'll go ahead and step in. We just discussed it in
we did just
committee.
discuss. Yeah.
So if there's no other questions, may I have a motion and a second to adopt first reading ordinance 63-20?
Revolt moves.
Warren second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. May I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules of council requiring 3 readings?
Revolt moves.
Warren second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 63-20 under suspension.
Revolt moves.
Warren second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Okay, now may I have a motion and a second to add ordinance 64-20 to the agenda under Council Rule 111.06C, suspending the requirement for a committee report?
Revolt moves.
Warren second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Now may I have a motion and a second to read by title only ordinance 64-20?
Revolt moves.
Warren second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Ben, please.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of North Canton through the Board of Control to enter into an agreement for the purchase of real property located on Stratavon Street Northwest in the city of North Canton, Stark County, Ohio. Permanent parcel number 1002818. At a cost not to exceed $150,000 and declaring the same to be an emergency.
Okay, same as the last one. If there's nothing further, I'd like a motion and a second to adopt the first reading ordinance 64-20.
Bolt moves.
Warren second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. May I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules of council requiring 3 readings.
Revolt moves.
Where in second?
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 64-20 under suspension of the rules.
Revolt moves.
Bolt
Where in
seconds.
second?
All in-
Fold, stop it.
Throw this up here.
Don't
Keep going,
ruin our
consistency.
gig.
Yeah.
Gosh.
We're on a
Where
roll,
in
Doug.
second?
Yeah. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Okay, and the meeting's calendar for the remainder of the month. Next Monday, September 28th, we have a regular city council meeting. And that concludes our special city council meeting. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Revolt
So
moves.
moved. Where in second?
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Have a great evening, everyone.
God,
All
I
right.
miss seeing
Take
you
care.
guys.
Take
Bye,
care,
dog.
Bye. See ya.
Night.
care, everybody.
Bye.
Have fun at Salt Fork.
Thank you.
Take care, Matt.